Good morning, everyone. If you can hear me, type in good morning. Good morning, Ritu. Cameron, good morning. Sonia. John, good morning. Hannah, nice to see you again. Julia, what's up? Owen, Stephen. Good morning, my friends. Andrew. Ariana, good morning. Hi, and to you too. Arjun, my folks, my friends, my neighbors are mowing the lawn. I hope it's not too noisy. That'll end eventually. Nav, did you just raise your hand? Because I just saw a hand raise. There's this new hand raising function. I don't know if you've noticed, a few little things have changed on Moodle. So there's a little hand in the lower right corner. Also, Arjun can't hear the neighbors mowing. That's terrific. I think they just stopped too. So that's terrific. But that's life. Andrew, did you just raise your hand for to try it out, or is this like a real question? Or let's not raise our hands is what I was going to go with that. So because it just pops up and it kind of annoys me. Yeah, cool. Try it out. Thank you. So just just type in the chat bar if you have to do something. I'm used to looking. I mean, once you get the hang of this. I mean, when the COVID pandemic started, this whole big blue button thing was a new platform. But now I've become a pro at it. I'm real comfortable. And so I hate when it changes because I'm used to keeping an eye both on what I'm doing and what I'm saying and so on. No problem enough. And then seeing the chat bar. So it's much easier for me to keep an eye on the chat bar. When this pop-up happens, every time someone raises their hand, I'm spooked and I'm freaked out. There's Peircean secondness. I have real doubt. My habits are ruptured. You guys freak me out each time. So don't do it. And then it throws me all off, right? Because, the train of thought is a form of sign action. Yeah, big blue buttons come a long way, says Owen. Early days were riddled with technical difficulties. I didn't know that. I had a few technical difficulties in the early days, but I wasn't sure if it was on my end. I had to change my setup and the way I do things. My laptop would overheat, so I put a thing to cool it underneath, and I've got it all figured out now because I really take pride in the quality of my teaching. And it really sucked to feel that I was, giving a subpar service, like that the quality of my teaching was coming down as a result of this change to online. And so I've done everything I can to make it as good. That said, I'm really looking forward to resuming class in real person. That'll be really fun. Plus, I'll have all the Moodle pages will still be there. So I've pimped out all my Moodle pages. They're all decked out, so I can keep those and do the live face-to-face stuff. That's really going to be that's going to be an insane package. All right, my friends. So what are we doing today? So I promised last time that we'd look at the midterms. So that's the first thing we're going to do. I'll show you what the midterm is going to look like. Then we're going to do philosophy of science. Today's our last class on philosophy of science. But there's a sense in which we're going to be doing that throughout the term because Peirce's philosophy is systematic. And so when we move on after the midterm to philosophy of logic, logic is going to be understood in a semiotic way as trying to externalize your thought to follow through on what you can and cannot infer from what. And the only way to determine that is going to be by using signs and so on, and regimenting your thinking with those signs. And so when we transition over, there's a reason why I put this now, because it's going to help you understand what comes after. I'm going to take a brief pause. I'm going to ask if there are any questions. We've been doing a lot. We've been covering a lot of ideas and a lot of arguably difficult ideas. And so if there are any questions that have occurred to you, I'll open up the floor without taking too long. I think it's a good thing to pause a little bit and see if there's some loose ends that we can tie up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to build on what we've done so far. So what we've established last week, there were 3 parts, right? So first part for philosophy of science was taking stock of experience in an unprejudiced way so as to see its most elementary structure and the basic categories that are required for cognition to even be a thing. So firstness, secondness, and thirdness. You need a minimum of 3 things related in a triadic fashion for something resembling an intelligence to even begin to arise, no matter how rudimentary. And that was week 1 or part 1. And then the following week, what we did was we understood what it meant to be a sign. It's a structure where something makes something else known to something else, right? But known, quote unquote, stands for to, right? So we were looking at that structure. Today we're going to augment that model, and we're going to make some further subdistinctions between iconic, indexical, and symbolic relations. And what we'll do is we'll start off right away with the Peirce packet. We'll read that together. The Peirce packet this week is going to be quite short. partly because the ideas are difficult and partly because we're nearing the midterm and I think you have a good amount on your plate. And so we're going to have a 3-page Peirce packet this week. We're going to read that. And even if it won't be all 100% clear, we'll just go ahead and get that reading out of the way. And then what we'll do is we'll practice together. And it's by doing that you understand, right? So this is in a pragmatist spirit. The knowledge that we're going to acquire today is knowledge that you can put into practice. So we'll practice on these concepts and apply them. And then once we've done that and we understand this distinction between icons and indices and symbols, we'll look at the full account. We'll just glimpse at it. So there's a bigger picture here. It's too complicated. I can't possibly teach it. I don't even know at the undergraduate level if I could even attempt it, but I want you to be able to place the part within the whole. So for you to be able to see what we're going to be learning today, where it would fit in a full picture. Were we to continue studying philosophy of science? We're just spending 3 weeks on that, but we could arguably spend, a whole year just on that, perhaps even more. So let's just go for the midterm right now. Let's have a look at what the midterm is going to look like. This is our week-by-week breakdown. All right, so here we are. We've worked our way through 6 weeks now, and we're at week 6. So Thursday, June 17th, Philosophy of Science, Part 3. We've ticked a lot of items on this to-do list, so it's going really well. You have your Peirce Packet 6 to read, and you just turned in your 4th entry, which I'm looking forward to read. Expect that to that'd be graded sometime within the next week. And so next week, we're doing the midterm. The midterm is worth 30%. And it says here, covers every idea and reading studied since the start of term. So you see this cutoff point over here, right? So everything that shows up above this. So that means so Peirce Packet 6, 5, 4, 3, and so on, working your way back. And also all of these ideas, right? All of these ideas, with the exception of, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, it's the sunlight. I just had my first ray of sunlight, and the caveman in me wants to clear its mucus to smell the animals for hunting. It's so unapplicable. I don't hunt for a living. I teach. All right. Here we go. So with the exception of this, I'm just going to show you this, but we're actually going to do just a 3-part distinction. Is what we're going to be learning today, but I just want you to see the tenfold distinction, right? So with the exception of that, all of these ideas are all ideas that you're held accountable for. You should be able to explain them in your own words, to understand them, and also to relate them to one another, because I hope you're beginning to see that all of these things hang together. And that's one of the skills that I'm hoping that you're slowly developing, is this ability to see how all of that hangs together. So clearness, the Greek grades of clearness, belief, all of these ideas, right? And so when you're studying, a good way of studying is making sure you can tick all these items on the list. For each one of these things, you should be able, without going over the readings, because it's going to be open book, but if you have to run through the readings to find out what's what, it's really going to waste your precious time. You should be able to understand all of these things. You should be able to get together with a classmate, and you should be able to quiz you, and you should be able to say intelligent things about them and explain them. And so that's what you're held accountable to do. The exam is going to last 3 hours. So it will begin at 10 a.m. sharp. So next week, I don't say hello. Instead, at 10 a.m., the exam questions will pop up on Moodle at the space where it's going to say midterm. I believe the space is already there. I'm not sure if you folks can see it. Did I put it there? No, you folks can't see it. Only I can see it. But you'll have a place that says midterm exam, and then you go there, and at 10 a.m. sharp, you'll have the questions. From 10 a.m. sharp, and the answers are due before 1 p.m. So we're using the entire 3 hour available to us. Doesn't mean you have to be working during the entire 3 hours, but that's the time span that we have allocated to us by KPU. I'm giving you each minute that's available to us. So from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I'm going to write that. I'm going to write everything that I'm saying over here. I'm going to give myself a bit of space. All right. So the exam, right, starts at 10 a.m. and PDF answers. So you'll have a template to write your answers. It'll be like just like the entry. So your PDF answers, right, are due at or before. Let me just say before 1 p.m. Right. And when I say before, be smart. I don't accept late entries even by 1 second. And so before means before. All right. So you should be smart. What you should actually do is you should think, well, let's be done by 12:30. What do you think? Is that a reasonable time? 12:30? Just to give yourself, space, right? Because what can go wrong will go wrong. Yeah. Yeah, 12:30 p.m. Okay, so that way, if something happens and something goes wrong, you have 30 minutes to deal with it. And 30 minutes, by the way, is enough time for you to run to your nearest or drive to your nearest McDonald's. If your internet connection for whatever reason fails, this is a tip that my partner gave me a few months ago, and I thought that was a really good tip. We were at McDonald's grabbing some sort of food for our kids, and she said, you know, they have free Wi-Fi in every McDonald's. I asked, so, and she said, you know what, if your students ever you know, their internet breaks down or whatever, tell them to run to a McDonald's. And I thought, wow, that's a really good advice. So if anything ever happens, you know, have something on standby. I don't care for your sad stories. Make it happen. I'm here every day at 10 a.m. You don't know what happens in my life. I don't want to know what happens in your life. Make it happen. The answers have to be uploaded. And so if you give yourself a 30-minute buffer, that's your 30-minute insurance policy. So give yourself this deadline and assume that I've got a very lenient 30-minute leeway. And the exam is going to be, like I said, you've got the questions are going to appear on Moodle. They'll have a template that's a Word file that you can work on, just like the entries. And you can use that. You write your name on your student ID right where it says so. You write out your answers, and then you save that as a PDF and you upload. I'll break down the questions in a moment, but right now, as far as the format, I know it's not held Canada Day, so all of this is about June 24th, about the format. So it'll be online on Moodle, starts at 10 a.m. You get the questions, you get an answer template, you write, you save it as a PDF, and you upload it before 1 p.m. Is that part all clear? If it's clear, type in clear. If you got a question, ask your question. And I'm delighted to answer your question. I'd much rather you ask, and we're 100% or 110%. That doesn't make any sense, but 110% clear. All right. Now the exam is going to be worth 30%. I like really, really dumb math. So here's how it's going to break down. You're going to have 3 questions worth 10% each. All right. So they will be essay-style questions, meaning you have to develop them, you know, in full language. No citations, no MLA, no APA. I don't want you to quote. I don't want you to copy paste. I want to hear your words, and you'll have 4 to choose from. So let me use my typewriter for that. All right, you'll have 4 questions to choose from. 4 questions to choose from. Right. I'll get to that in a second, Arjun. No worries. 4 questions to choose from, and you answer only 3. So you drop 1. You drop the one you don't want to answer, and you answer the rest. So I'll give you 4 questions. You drop 1. So the first thing you do when the exam starts is you look at all 4 questions, and you tell yourself, okay, which ones are you most strong and comfortable with? You answer those. The rest, you know, the one that you don't want to answer, don't answer. You answer only 3, and they will be worth 10%. Arjun says, what is the expected word count for each question, or rather for your answers? There's no set word count, but roughly half a page, maximum 1 page. So single space, the template will be single space, just like the entries. So roughly half a page, maximum 1 page. Don't spill over 1 page. Arjun, does that answer your question? No word count. Yeah. Don't exceed 1. If you exceed 1, then that means you're rambling. You got to rein it back, right? And so, look, you've got 3 hours, 3 questions, 3 half pages to a page. It's totally doable. Now, what am I going for? I'm not looking for, it's not a research paper. I don't want citations. What I'm looking for are answer the question and only the question clearly and accurately. I don't want to hear your views. I don't want you to reinvent the wheel. I don't want you to solve all of the world's problems. I don't want you to get on a soapbox and tell me your made-up theory of everything. I just want you to display that you understand the course content. And it will be I will not hit below the belt. All right. So the questions in the exam are going to bear on this and only this. There's a whole world outside that box. I'm not addressing that. So if we haven't addressed it, don't worry about it. We're not going to be talking about it. Conversely, if it shows up in our readings, and if it shows up in the things we've said from the moment I say hello to the moment I say goodbye, it's fair game. It's course content. All right. Now, that said, there are things, so just be mindful. There are things that we said in lecture that weren't necessarily said in the readings. And there are things that show up in the readings that we didn't get necessarily a chance to mention in the lecture. You're held accountable for both the readings and the lectures. All right. And you write your answers clearly. Give yourself enough time to proof. grammar, punctuation, all that matters. It's not like they allocate special points for that, but grammar and punctuation and so on, that goes hand in hand with writing clearly. So I want intelligible answers. I want them to be accurate also. And the way these will be graded will be fairly straightforward. It's graded out of 10. And so you can imagine the best result is 10, right? And then we go down 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And then when you get to 5, there's a cutoff point. And 4, 3, 2, 1. And I don't give 0. So the way each question is going to be graded, if you wrote a full English sentence, I don't care what it is. So you show up and you write, Mary had a little lamb, period, you get 1 mark. Right, you're over here, you get 1 mark. Just because you wrote a sentence, you showed up and you uploaded your PDF on time. So the worst you can get is 3 out of 30. If you write 3 times, Mary had a little lamb, or Peirce had a very strange looking beard, or something like that, you can't get 0. I will at least give you 1. And so what this means now then is that there are 4 varieties of fail, that's over here, and 6 varieties of pass. The cutoff point is here. The cutoff point in the middle is, let's like, a regular course, right? So if the pass is to have 50% and over, did you answer the question correctly, yes or no? If you answered the question correctly, that's the first sort of division, yes or no. If the answer is no, you did not answer the question correctly, you're going to get a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1 out of 10. Right? If you wrote beautifully, man, you know how to write, but you're making stuff up and you're just plain wrong. Your answer is incorrect, right? Then you'll get a 4. It's beautifully written. And then let's say you write really poorly and you're completely off your game and you don't know what you're writing about, something like that, then you'll be down over here. These obviously are extremely rare. I never see them. Conversely, these are also pretty rare. They're fairly clear cut. The bookends are very obvious. Just as 1 is something that smells and stinks so bad, I can smell it from a mile away, and it's obviously sucks so bad that it just clearly deserves only a 1 out of 10. 10s are completely perfect. 10s, even if I ask myself, do I have anything to critique about this answer? It's impeccable in every way. And so that's also clear cut. Impeccable in every way. I could have written this. This looks like it's from a student who's ready for grad school. That answer is completely perfect. It just gets a 10 out of 10. And that's a thing. That's a possibility, right? I'm not dogmatic. If it's a 10 out of 10 that the answer deserves, not you. Let's make a distinction. I'm only grading what's written. Then it gets a 10 out of 10. And so that's it. Then there are different other varieties between those two things. So short of being perfect, there's different varieties. And if, let's say, you answered correctly, but it's poorly written and there's a few things missing, you just clear the bar barely, that would look at like a 5, right? 5 out of 10 and so on. So very, very intuitive way of grading. Let's say near perfect, right? It's just, I can't find a little flaw in there, but otherwise, man, it's really, really solid. That gets a 9 out of 10. So you can see very easily how these things are going to be graded. I'm going to do that 3 times for 3 questions. I grade them per question, just so you know how I grade. So it's not like your performance in one question colors the other. I don't grade per person. So one day I sit down and I said, today I'm grading question 2, let's say, and I go through the entire stack of exams, which I randomize, and I don't look at your name, and I just grade question 2. Right? And then when I do, let's say, question 3, I just grade question 3. So it's not like I remember how you got for question 2, and that's not going to color how I interpret, your result for question 3 and so on. So I just grade these like that. You're going to get a numerical result. I'll post it on Moodle, and that will be it. I'll write maybe a little bit of feedback in a feedback column and a little feedback box on Moodle, and that is it. If you want more abundant feedback, I can do that on a case-by-case basis, but nothing's going to change, so I'd rather that we look forward instead of looking backward. All right, so that's how your grades are going to be added up. That's how you're going to get your result out of 30. Let's just pause now. I think I've said a lot of things. Are there any further questions? You can write in paragraph. No questions at the moment. You can write in paragraphs also. That's okay. It doesn't have to be one paragraph. So long as it's clear. Like, impress me with clarity. And remember, I'm always like, also, don't just drop jargon. You have to show that you understand the jargon. So if we've encountered some technical terms, explain those technical terms and explain them in your own way. And moreover, give examples. That's always good. So never just use a technical term. Like that, think about the 3 grades of clearness, right? Never just use a technical term. If you use a technical term, immediately define it afterwards. And then don't just define it, because we saw the 2nd grade of clearness is also not that great. The definitions have their drawbacks. Give me an example. right? So if you use a technical term, define it, give me an example. And then if you have to choose between an example that we discussed in class or an example that's original from you, clearly if you do an original example, you're going to get a better chance of climbing up on that 1 to 10 ladder, right? Because you're taking a risk. You stand to be wrong in the way you've chosen your example. And so if you do it right, then I'm going to reward you for that. So how can I not but think that you've actually understood the ideas if you can use the proper terminology, define it in a way, in your own terms. You don't just grab a definition off the net, and you've given an example that's original. If you do all those things, that's terrific, and you answer the question and only the question. So read the question carefully. It's not just a chance for you to unfurl everything you know. Structure it such that it serves the purpose of actually answering the question that I have posed. That is it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, don't cheat. I have ways of finding out, and if you cheat, you'll get kicked out of KPU. And I also want to say something really quickly. Students don't know this, and you should be aware. I don't know if I should say it. I should probably keep it a secret. But, you know, during the online, everyone's teaching online now, people are having their exam answers and term papers written for them by whatever, Peirce online. There's these services that are offered. As soon as you purchase one of these things and you get a paper written for my class, I get a notification in my inbox, and I can pay the company to see who bought their services, so then I can get you fired. So they get double money. They get the money from you who paid for the services, and they get money from the prof who finds out, so I can get you kicked out. Yeah. You know how many students that got kicked out so far since the pandemic? You don't want to know. And it doesn't cost me a lot. You pay like $700, and I pay $3 to see who hired their services. And they make an extra $3 and they get you fired. So yeah, don't do it. Okay, so so don't do it. And Ariana writes, that's entirely right. So it's not like the journal entries where it's from your perspective. No, not at all. Not at all. It's just show me you understand what's in this red box here, Ariana. That is it. Just show me that you understand these ideas. That's all I want you to display. It's like, all right, I understand what's in here. That's it. Owen writes, by the way, just more scary stories here. I also read that they hold people at ransom, saying they will report you unless you pay astronomical amounts. That's right. They do that too. You're entirely right. So it's all shady. Don't ever do that. All right. Don't do it, people. Yeah. Just like seriously. And besides, this is a cool course. Seriously, like it doesn't get better than this. You're going to spend your whole life like, mowing the lawn and hopefully and paying a mortgage and working your butt off. And now you're doing philosophy, and these are cool ideas. Just enjoy it. Engage with these ideas. Have fun. And you won't fail. Trust me. Look, if you do the work, you're going to do okay. You're going to do okay. But do the work, right? If you haven't done the work, you can fail totally. And if you cheat, it'll be worse than fail. I'll come down on you like the wrath of God. All right. But don't, right? It's that simple. All right. I think I've said a lot. It's 20 minutes in. Are there any further questions about the midterm, or is everything clear? If everything's clear, tell me clear. And if you got a question, last call for questions. And by all means, ask, right? And also, don't cooperate. This is not a case of collective inquiry. This is a case of everyone has to look at the star independently. Don't look at each other. All right, so don't, it's great for students to practice up until the minute the exam starts. So you can study together. That's cool. So if you study together, I encourage that. But you can't, each exam has to be written individually by each student. All right, well, I think I've said everything I want to say about that. Cool. All right, I'm glad that's clear. My friends, let's just pause now. And when I mean questions now, it's not so much questions about the course content, course structure, course content, so philosophical questions. Let's just open up a space here. You have philosophical questions about the stuff we've looked at so far. Let's just open that space, and if you have one, I'll answer it as best as I can, and then we'll gradually move on. I'm hoping everything's decently clear, but if you have a question, that's cool. So on the philosophical side, if everything is clear, let's just for a change, just say okay. Everything is okay. Type in okay, just so I can hear back from you. Well, then I've done my job right, and you've done your job right. That's terrific. And remember, just keep working hard at it. Right? These ideas aren't. And will you confirm this with me? And this is. I just want to get a sense if I'm right about this, because that's been my experience with Peirce. My experience with Peirce, because he's been my friend now for about a quarter century. Is that when you first encounter his ideas, you think, that's crazy, right? And then you vaguely don't understand too. So it's not super clear, and the part that is clear sounds crazy. But when you give it further thought, it starts to make sense, and eventually you're like, holy crap, right? Something like that, right? That's been my experience, and it requires multiple engagements, right? Nav says, could we do a firstness, secondness, and thirdness with an example of an experience of resistance? Yeah, Nav, let's talk about resistance for a second. Nav, if you close your eyes, are you in front of a desk right now, Nav? Some sort of a desk, a table? Cool. All right. So close your eyes, right? And now imagine, put your palms right. I'm going to do it too. Put your palms against your desk, and it's a bit. Hopefully, it's a big desk, and you can't move it too much, right? But push a little bit. Push a little bit, right? Can you feel the Are you doing that right now? Are you pushing a little bit with your palms? Can you feel the desk stopping you with your hands? Right. All right. Cool. So you're forming an intention to push with your hands, right? There's some sort of there's a feeling it's like to exert your muscles. There's a firstness there of what it means to move. You're in charge. This is on your side of that division, but there's something out there above and beyond you, right? Something else, right? Then your exertion, your feeling of trying to push this energy forward. There's something else. And if you close your eyes, now think about this. You don't necessarily need to know what it is for it to obstruct you. So let me say that again very carefully. There needn't be any understanding of what's going on for this event to be. Do we agree, Nav? You don't have to understand, like, if you can bump, that's why you can bump into things, because they don't require you to be aware of them. They'll just hit you, right? Yeah, that's the second. What's the second? It's the not you in front of you that's stopping you. Now, of course, normally when you encounter secondness, you want to drape that immediately in thirdness because you understand what's going on, right? You want to, whoa, what's stopping me? Like, think about it. If you're walking and something blocks you at the knee level, you don't just stay there and just kind of like a dumb robot, are against the thing, whatever it is that's obstructing you. You look down and try to identify it. If you look down and try to identify it, that's thirdness. There's now something above and beyond your leg wanting to move in one direction, the thing, whatever it is, that's stopping it. And then there's this third thing, which is trying to figure out what the hell is going on between what's this event, what's this confrontation. And as I'm speaking right now, you can't see me, but I'm pumping my fists together. I'm bumping my knuckles together against one another. That's thirdness. Secondness just is the confrontation stripped of any intelligibility, right? Like if I, for instance, if you punch someone, right? There's the punch comes before the recognition. Do we agree? Like, let's say you don't see it coming, because there's two kinds of punches. There's the punch you can see coming, right? And there's the punch that you can't see coming. Like, let's just go there for a moment. Let's see if that makes sense to everyone. Do we understand that? Like, I'm not a boxing person, but it seems to me that there's two kinds of punches. The punch you saw coming, like you saw the person coming at you and you know they were going to punch, or you could have conceivably have ducked or whatever, even if it came fast. And there's the punch you didn't see coming. Yeah, does everyone agree with that? Does you see that distinction? Just want to make sure everyone follows and that makes some sense, right? There's the punch you can see coming and the punch you don't see coming. Yeah. Okay, so the punch you can see coming, the thirdness is to see it coming, right? There's you. There's this external non-you that's coming, and it's going to hit. It's going to be an event. And that event is going to be there whether or not it's seen or not seen, whether or not it's understood or not understood. That's secondness, right? You see it coming. But the clear, pure case of secondness, without any hint of thirdness, is when you're just punched and you didn't see it coming, right? If you're punched and you didn't see it coming, of course, the immediate thing after that, like I'm talking like a nanosecond after that, is your organism's attempt to try to take hold of the situation and understand this clash with the non-it. Because there's this organism, which is you, and then there's this environment, which is the non-you, and they clash. Peirce often uses the expression, the outward clash. They clash with one another. That's what perception is. That's what action is, right? It's the clash between you and your environment, you and an outward clash with the environment, right? Clearly, that outward clash is a source of information for you, and you need it. It's also a source of pain in the case of being punched, right? But the you grasping who punched you when it's a surprise punch, do we agree, comes after the punch? like your holy cow, what happened comes a nanosecond after the event that happened. Like if I say, like, here's the sequence of events, if you were to put it on a timeline, right? Something happens. It just happens, right? And then there's this, right? There's this, what happened, right? That's thirdness over here. That what happened, that's thirdness, right? That's you trying to figure out already what happened. Happened is just like, pow, there was a clash between something and something else. There was an event of some sort, right? Otherwise, if it was just firstness, nothing happens. And firstness, as we saw, it's this very peaceful Zen state of being like nothing, right? Or there's something, but there's not enough texture there for it to become a thing, right? The moment there's a violent contrast between something and something else, you get something that starts to be an event. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what was the event, right? So now you have one, the contrast between the two, and the third thing trying to understand that contrast. Nav, was that helpful? Do you see that? And Owen's right. So it's a dyadic model when someone stops a secondist and doesn't care to interpret. Yeah, but you can't stop, Owen. That's the thing. So here's the nuance, right? Thank you, Nav. I'm glad that helped. Try not to care to interpret, Owen. Try that out. Try that out. So the only scientific intelligence, right? The only consciousness that's not able, that will not care to interpret, will be a dead thing or an unconscious thing. Like once the boxer's on the ground, knocked out, and they get punched, they're not interpreting the punches anymore. As far as they're concerned, the whole crowd could be coming down on them and taking turns punching them. They don't distinguish anymore who's punching, right? What's this non-me that's hurting me, that's impacting me? But you have no choice. As soon as you're conscious, Owen, you have no choice but to try to interpret. You'll just blurt out a conjecture, a hypothesis as to what's going on. Like try it. Ask your sister at some point today to surprise slap you in the back of the head. Tell her, like, give her $5 and say, you know, at some point today, come slap me in the back of the head. And especially very simple life forms, Reese, right? So what about very simple life forms? Especially them have to interpret. They can't help but interpret. Try that with your cat. Slap your cat, see what it does. There's no such thing as, you know, the cat can't possibly not react, right? Whether or not its interpretations can become successful and sophisticated, the hypotheses that it can generate in the phase of inquiry can reach the level that we can, surely no. And that goes with the biological endowments that you're given, right? So you play the cards that you've been dealt by nature. And we humans, we have a better hand than most other animals, and presumably aliens have an even better hand than we do out there. Right? There could be some intelligent life forms out there who are able to interpret the world more successfully than we, right? But you can't help but do it. It's impossible. That's what being conscious is. Like, think about it. What is the, what do we say? Nah, no worries. What's the, like, think about it. How do we check if we're conscious? Like we say, pinch me. Am I dreaming? Pinch me. Didn't you hear that? Like, you see this sometimes in movies or stories, right? Someone says, oh my God, I must be dreaming. Pinch me. Something wonderful's happening, right? You just won the lottery or something, and you turn to your friend. Is this a dream? Pinch me. They're asking you, give me secondness. Rupture me from without, right? In a way that only reality can, because reality is what's independent of you. Reality, what's outside of you, right? And so there's a sense in which the whole Cartesian story about your mind being isolated from the world just doesn't make any sense on a Peircean account. And the proof of that is to slap someone behind the head. So next time you see a Cartesian, slap them behind the head. And then what you're doing is you're saying, hi, I'm another ego. There's at least two egos in the universe. Like the Cartesian sits there and says, I might be the only ego in the universe, right? And then another ego comes and slaps them behind the head. It's like, well, there's at least two, pal. Because you didn't see that coming, did you? Right? And literally, you didn't see that coming, right? There's another ego, and the ego is the non-you, the non-ego, another something else, an other, something outside of you. And you're trying to figure that out, right? Yeah. And the thing is, Owen says, not really sure how Cartesian method is even logically based at this point, but see, Owen, in Peircean terms, what goes wrong with, and we'll see this in the last week when we talk about cosmology and the systems of metaphysics. In Peircean terminology, what's wrong with the picture that Descartes is saying is that he believes in thirdness, but has forgotten that thirdness is underlaid by secondness and firstness. Like he believes in the realm of interpretation and ideas as if it was divorced from the realm of clashes and impacts thoughts and brute shit that you have no control over, right? Like as if that could be a thing. There is no such thing as a thirdness without a secondness beneath it and a firstness beneath it still, right? Yeah, like a God, like a ghost, right? Like a ghost doesn't, like what's in it for the ghost, right? You can't punch a ghost, it can't eat, it can't, like it makes me laugh. Do you ever see the movie Ghost? Has anyone ever seen the movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg and what's his face with the mullet? Jeez Louise, help me out here. Patrick Swayze, yeah, that good-looking guy from Dirty Dancing there. So he's a ghost, and it's hilarious because he wants to tell his girlfriend, hey, I'm a ghost, I'm still around, because he died. And he walks through walls and whatever, right? And of course, he can't tell his girlfriend that he's around, because to speak, you need to do what? Like when I'm speaking right now, what happens with my mouth? How can I speak to you now? Someone break down the physics of what it is that allows me to now encode speech, and you're able to decode it. What's happening at a physical level with my mouth when I speak to you? Like, what am I doing? That's right, Arjun. I'm moving air through my esophagus. What's moving air? Moving air is like I have to have that secondness of pushing against the air, right? And you can't, if you're a ghost, you can't speak. Why? Because you can't even go boo. Why? Because what would be boo? This sounds crazy, but if you ever hear boo from a ghost, where's the sound coming from? Sound is nothing but a movement of airwaves that's hitting your eardrums. Okay? If the ghost is non-physical, how is it moving air? That makes no sense. You can't do boo if you're a pure spirit. To be, yeah, you can't, right? It'd have to be magic. To say boo, you have to have some skin in the game of this thing called reality. You have to be able to impact the air, right, and make it move. And in the movie, it's hilarious because he ends up learning from some other ghost how to do secondness. So there's a scene where he's trying to knock over a Coke can, an empty Coke can, and his fingers keep going through the Coke can, and then he says, if you concentrate enough, right, you can, at the point of impact with the Coke can, let's say your ectoplasm can become dense enough that the Coke can tips over. And then he finds out how to act in the world, and he ends up alerting his girlfriend to his presence as some spirit, some disembodied spirit, right? But you have to have a body in order to be able to knock over a Coke can, right? And you have to have that kind of, that secondness, right? And the story that Descartes says is kind of it's a story about the mind and what it means to be a person, as if you were a ghost. But a ghost wouldn't make any sense. A ghost wouldn't even perceive, right? Because not only are you producing air, what you're hearing with your eardrums is also air hitting on your ears. Whatever language Descartes is speaking, whether it's Latin or French or I don't care what, he had to learn it from his peers. And he acquired it by his eardrums being impacted by sound waves, which were air. And that was non-him, right? That was something physical. That was brute physical events in the world. The dumbest clashes you can imagine, imbued with meaning because they're encoded and decoded, right? I'm going to pause because someone did ask a question and I riffed philosophical on that. Did that make sense and was that helpful? Then we're going to steer back on track, but that was my long-winded answer to that question. That makes sense? The one result I love from that is that I always say, like, spirits can't say boo. That's a really cool result. Like, think about it, right? We say boo. Well, if you're all spirit, how are you making, right? Yeah. And the memories of his girlfriends require neurons. Yeah, so the whole story that your consciousness is immaterial, it's a load of, that makes no sense, right? It makes no sense. All right, so let's now go to the reading. And it's interesting, if you want an account of philosophy of mind, that's one of the areas in which I work on Peirce scholarship is, finding out what are the consequences of Peirce's ideas for debates in philosophy of mind. I've spent a couple decades on that. All right, so let's now augment the triadic model with iconic, indexical, and symbolic relations. You don't know what those terms are, but you're about to find out. And in order to do that, we're going to read our Peirce packet together. So what I'm going to do, like I said, it's just 3 pages. I'm going to read through it. It's not going to make 100% sense, maybe like 80% sense, but that's okay. Is everyone good to go with the understanding that we're just going to do it and then we'll work on it after? Is everyone's good to go? If you're good to go, tell me good to go. Because there's no good way of doing this. Every which way we do is a little imperfect. But the cool thing in the Peircean philosophy is sometimes it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be self-improving, right? So a start just is a start. So there are three ways in which sign vehicles can relate to their objects. And when I say sign vehicles here, we understand that part of the triadic sign that does the standing for. And the object is that which is being stood for. That's, you know, so remember, something stands for something to something, right? So sign vehicles, that's the something that stands for. There are three kinds of signs which are all indispensable in all reasoning. The first is the icon, which exhibits a similarity or analogy to the subject of discourse. The second is the index, which, like a pronoun demonstrative or relative, forces the attention to the particular object intended without describing it. The third, or symbol, is the general name or description which signifies its object by means of an association of ideas or habitual connection between the name and the character signified. So there are three ways in which sign vehicles can relate to their objects. Let's look at the first way, by similarity to their object. Those signs are called icons. The judgment, "This chair appears yellow," separates the color from the chair, making the one predicate and the other subject. The percept, on the other hand, the thing you perceive, presents the chair in its entirety and makes no analysis whatsoever. But the perceptual judgment, "This chair appears yellow," has vaguely in mind a whole lot of yellow things, of which some have been seen and no end of others may be or might be seen. Two blue objects are ipso facto in relation to one another. So the moment you have two blue objects, no matter how far apart, by that very fact of being two blue objects, they're in a relation to one another in virtue of their shared quality. An icon is a sign which refers to the object that it denotes merely, ipso facto is by that very fact. By that very fact. So two blue objects, you got two blue objects, by the very fact that they are blue, they're in a relation to one another. And an icon is a sign which refers to the object that it denotes merely by virtue of characters of its own, and which it possesses just the same whether any such object actually exists or not. It is true that unless there really is such an object, the icon does not act as a sign, but this has nothing to do with its character as a sign. Anything whatever is an icon of anything insofar as it is like that thing and used as a sign of it. So everything is a potential icon of anything that would resemble it. An icon is a sign whose significant virtue is due simply to its quality. We say that the portrait of a person we have not seen is convincing, so far as, on the ground merely of what I see in it, I am led to form an idea of the person it represents or represents, right? It is an icon. But in fact, it is not a pure icon because I know that portraits have but the slightest resemblance to their originals, except in certain conventional aspects and after a conventional scale of values, etc. A sign vehicle can also be related to its object by real contact with their object. Those signs are called indices. Indices is the plural of index. An index is a sign which refers to the object that it denotes by virtue of being really affected by that object. Its sign vehicle cannot therefore be a mere quality because qualities are whatever they are independently of anything else. And to be really affected by something else, then you're at the level of secondness. An index is a sign whose significance of its object is due to its having a genuine relation to that object, irrespective of the interpretant. A rap on the door is an index. Anything which focuses the attention is an index. Anything which startles us is an index, insofar as it marks the junction between two portions of experience. Thus, a tremendous thunderbolt indicates that something considerable happened, although we may not know precisely what the event was. But it may be expected to connect itself with some other experience. A low barometer with a moist air is an index of rain. That is, we suppose that the forces of nature establish a probable connection between the low barometer with moist air and coming rain. The weathercock is an index of the direction of the wind, because in the first place, it really takes the self-same direction as the wind, so that there is a real connection between them, And in the second place, we're so constituted that when we see a weathercock pointing in a certain direction, it draws our attention to that direction. And when we see the weathercock veering in the wind, we're forced by the law of mind to think that direction is connected with the wind. And finally, sign vehicles can be connected to their objects by conventional association with their object. Those signs are called symbols. A symbol is a sign which owes its significant virtue to a character, which can only be realized by the aid of its interpretant. Any utterance of speech is an example. If the sounds were originally in part iconic, in part indexical, those characters have long since lost their importance. The words only stand for the objects they do and signify the qualities they do, because they will determine, in the mind of the auditor, corresponding signs. A symbol is a representamen or sign vehicle which fulfills its function regardless of any similarity or analogy with its object, and equally regardless of way factual connection therewith, but solely and simply because it will be interpreted to be a representamen. I think that's a typo, regardless of any factual connection. I'll change that. Any ordinary word, as give, bird, marriage, is an example of a symbol. It is applicable to whatever may be found to realize the idea connected with the word. A symbol does not show us a bird, nor enact before our eyes a giving or a marriage, but supposes that we're able to imagine those things, and thanks to learning a linguistic code, have associated the word with them. So you see here, I've kept it really short because we have a lot on our plate, but we're going to practice these ideas. So far, so good. This was our first watch. Like I said, I'm expecting this should be about 80% clear, maybe 60, 80% clear, and then we're going to make it clearer as we go, because it doesn't have to be perfect. All right? Let me just pause right now and see if there are any questions. Give me a chance to grab a bite of food. Let me see if there are any questions. If you have one, ask away. So icon, index, symbol. I'll just reread the subtitles here. By similarity with this object, those signs are called icons. So when the sign vehicle is similar to its object, that's an icon. When the sign vehicle has a real connection with its object, it's called an index, plural indices. And when the sign vehicle has a conventional association with its object, it's called a symbol. And we're going to practice that. Owen writes, so these are three separate categories, or did they rely on one another? They rely on one another in the same way that thirdness, secondness, and firstness rely on one another. So let me just make a drawing of that, and then we'll practice. You'll see more clearly what I mean. Let me just make a drawing here. All right, let me zoom in as much as I can. All right. Give myself a nice big white spot. Here we go. Imagine I have a Tupperware container, and I put inside another Tupperware container, and I put inside another Tupperware container. So far, so good, everyone? 3 Tupperware containers? You've all done that? Put a Tupperware container inside another Tupperware container in your kitchen? Tell me if that's something you can all relate to, right? So within, right? Such relations of containment, right? So the outer Tupperware container contains, so this Tupperware container over here, right? Actually, I might do them in separate colors. That's going to be probably easier to talk about. The red Tupperware container, the outermost red Tupperware container, contains the blue Tupperware container, and the blue Tupperware container contains the purple Tupperware container. And by transitivity, the outermost one contains the innermost one, so contains the purple one. So the red contains the purple. If you were to look at them, let's say like a bird's eye view, right? You're looking down, and these are the Tupperware containers. If you were to pick up, like imagine, remember, you're looking from the top down, right? So you're looking like a bird's eye view. If you were to pick up the red container, would you thereby pick up the purple container? So you lift it. That's right. You're correct. You would. You would pick it up. Same vantage, bird's eye view. If you were to pick up the purple container, would you thereby lift the red container? Correct answer. Okay. The categories are organized in the same fashion. So the Peircean categories, right? Let me try to keep this color coded. I'll write here. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Right. The thirdness That's in red. Okay. Oh, did I just lose my purple container? Yes, I did. Let me make myself my purple container again. I'm actually, while I'm at it, while I'm on purple, I'm going to write over here firstness. Firstness. And then switch over to blue over here. And I'm going to write secondness. Why are they called such dumb words? Well, because those dumb words track exactly their relation to one another. Three-term complex relations presuppose two-term relations, which presuppose monadic relations. So the triadic presupposes, dyadic presupposes monadic, but not the other way around. Likewise, and for the very same reasons, as we'll see in a moment when we work on and put all these distinctions on our model, symbols, what we've just seen here, symbols, presuppose indices, the index, right, which presuppose the icon, but not the other way around. An icon does not presuppose an index, and an index does not presuppose a symbol, but any symbol presupposes an index, and every index presupposes an icon. Let me give you one illustration that we talked a moment ago. I said just a moment ago that Descartes, the words that he learned to use, so when he uses language, right, when he says, right, I think, therefore I am, let's say he writes that down, right, I think, blah, 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 blah. Look, man, I think that's a piece of language. Do we all agree? Like it's je pense, or, you know, what in whatever language, right? That's a piece of language. I think. Do we all agree on that? I think. Like I put it in quotation marks just to really pick it up in its linguistic character, right? That's a symbol. It's held together by convention. In French, it would be je pense, and in other languages, it would be something else, right? He never could have acquired that had he not been hit in the ear with puffs of air. Does everyone see that? That symbol doesn't work without an index, which is him being at a specific place and time, being hit in his eardrum for real, with puffs of air. You can never learn a language. It's like, all right, how about this? I'm about to go learn a new language. I'm going to learn, I don't know what. Let's pick a language. I'm going to go learn Russian, but I don't want to be hit with puffs of air. And I don't want to be exposed to anything non-me. Can I, under those constraints, ever learn Russian? Can anyone ever teach me Russian? I don't want no puffs of air for me, pal. No photons hitting my eyeballs. I hate that stuff that comes from without, all this outward clash stuff. I don't know. I would just like to learn Russian, please. I cannot. You cannot acquire a code without undergoing here and now events of secondness. And those here and now events of secondness are definitely going to have a character. So if I hit you with the puff of air, I'm about to hit you with a puff of air. All right? Are you ready? Because I'm going to hit you with a puff of air now via the intermediary, by the way. So here's what happens. My puff of air is going to enter into one machine that's going to encode it, carry it through the internet, and another machine is going to transform it into what? You know what your speaker is? Your speaker is a puff of air machine. That's what your speaker is. I don't care if it's in your little ears or if you got another speaker out there, they're making puffs of air. So I'm going to create a puff of air. A bunch of machines are going to do their work. And on your end, it's going to have another puff of air machine going to make puffs of air. And I'm going to say popcorn. There you go. Popcorn is a convention. There's nothing about popcorn that's like the sound popcorn, right? Even if there's an iconic aspect maybe to the word pop, because when it pops, it sounds like pop. Certainly popcorn, right? En français, c'est maïs soufflé. In French, it's maïs soufflé. Does that sound like when you microwave your popcorn, do you listen carefully? Do you hear like maïs soufflé, maïs? French popcorn sounds different, right? Maïs soufflé, right? It's like, it sounds like Pennywise. That's creepy. I don't want to sound like Pennywise. That's just weird. That's on you, Ariana. That's on your end with your puffs of air. You're just weird. So I know too much now. Okay. So there's nothing about popcorn. It's a symbol. It's just a convention. But you can never acquire the code needed to decode those puffs of air without having a here and now impact in the manner of an index. And that particular puff of sound has a quality. It was the quality popcorn. I can also give you another quality, which is also still going to be a puff of air, but it's going to have a different quality, a different iconic character. I'm going to say cucumber. Still puffs of air, but distinguishable puffs of air because one puff of air had one qualitative character, one firstness, and the other had a different qualitative character. Popcorn, puff of air with the quality. Cucumber, puff of air with another quality. I'm going to now say everything slowly, but I'm going to put my little red dot right where I need it to be at each step. All right? Does everyone see my little red dot right now? Popcorn is a habit you've acquired. It's also a sound that you hear, and that sound has a particular quality that's different from other sounds you hear, like cucumber. Popcorn is a symbol, it's an index, and it's an icon. A first approach. Thirdness presupposes secondness and firstness, but not the other way around. Who asked me that question about firstness, secondness, and thirdness? Who asked me, or how the three symbol, index, and icon? Who asked me that original question before I went on this tangent to help you out and answer that? Who was the one who said, how are the three related? Owen. Yeah. So these three separate categories, do they rely on one another? Yeah. Owen, do you see that as a first approximation? And we're going to keep doing more washes on this. Perfect. All right. So now let's practice together. We've got this model that we worked on, right? So something is in a relationship with something else, right? So to be in a relationship with something else and to be in a relation with that relation thereby is to put you in that relation. So if the sign vehicle is already in a relation with its object, then being in a relation with the relation puts you in a relation with the object, right? Like for instance, if I have a relation to Brad Pitt and you have a relation to me, you have a relation to Brad Pitt, right? Because to be in a relation with a relation to a thing is just the same as being in a relation with the thing. It's just a more complex relation. So let's imagine, for instance, if this is me, right? Forget that these are sign vehicles and objects and so on. Let's just talk about relation. This is Brad Pitt over here, right? And if I have a relation to Brad Pitt and you have a relation to my relation to Brad Pitt, you also have a relation to Brad Pitt, right? And so that's what this idea is, right? That's how signs work. And we can assign to them the categories of experience, firstness, secondness, and thirdness, something, a quality, something else, the secondness, right? So it's going to stand for something else. Two, an interpretant, some third thing that's not this nor that is going to be the third thing and be put into relation. That's the model that we had. What we're going to do is we're going to graph the distinctions that we had, that we're adding today, onto this axis over here, the relation between the sign vehicle and the object. So remember when I was characterizing the reading, I said an icon, an index, and a symbol are ways of characterizing the relation that the sign vehicle bears to its object. And all of this is going to be ultra applicable by the end of today's class. We're going to actually do some really applied work, so don't worry, all right? What we have then is the question, what connects the sign vehicle and the object? And in answer to that, we have three possibilities. Either a symbol, which means that the sign vehicle and the object are connected by convention. An index, which means that the sign vehicle and the object are connected by contiguity. And contiguity just means being near one another or touching each other, right? Like the puffs of air that hit your eardrum and your eardrum that hit whatever's the next organ inside all the way down to your brain, right? All into a loop, right? That ends up with being, yeah. And finally, an icon, which is where the sign vehicle is connected to the object by similarity. Let's just pause. Ariana, right? So popcorn would be the symbol. The fact that it sounds like popcorn would be the index. And the fact that it doesn't, no. Popcorn would be the symbol, yes. The fact that it sounds, full stop, would be the index. And the fact that it sounds like popcorn, the sound popcorn, the modulation of that particular melody, that would be the icon. Yeah. Yeah. The fact that it sounds, just the brute fact that something hits you, that's the index. It directs your attention. And then it directs your attention and you say, okay, what sound did I hear? What melody? Right? And it's popcorn, what in linguistics we would call a phoneme. So if you do linguistics, the firstness would be the phoneme. It's the way it sounds, right? It has a way it sounds. The word popcorn has a way it sounds. It's the pronunciation that distinguishes people with an accent and without an accent. Like if you have someone who doesn't speak English properly, and you say, I would like to have some popcorn, right? The difference between the way they said popcorn and the way I say popcorn is That's the sound, right? That melody. Not enough for you to think they're saying a different word, but nevertheless, there's a qualitative difference there that's noticeable. And you'll say, oh, they speak English, but with an accent. That means they have the sound down pat, enough for you to distinguish which words they want to use, but enough for you to distinguish also that the quality is a little off. That's what an accent is, right? And Sweta writes, is that also a symbol because the name of pronunciation? Yes, it is. It's all of those things. That's right, Sweta. It is a symbol insofar as you grab it in that respect as a convention. It's just a convention that we decided to assign. That's assigned to that sound that it will pick out that object. So popcorn is connected to its object by a convention, right? But the word itself hits your ear because it hits your ear. That's contiguity. And the word itself has a quality. The word itself is popcorn. It's that particular sound, right? Does that help, Ariana and Sweta? We're going to keep working on this, but at this stage, right? Because we're going to go in stages. And remember, we want to use a Peircean picture in the way we even teach Peirce, right? It doesn't have to be perfect. We ask questions, we fine-tune, and it gets better over time. To understand Peirce is to be at the limit of inquiry, right? To understand it all. And that's an ideal. We're not going to be there. All right, so the way you figure out which is what is by asking yourself the following question. What happens when one precisely supposes the interpretant is absent? Now, remember precision, right? You want to spell it often with a double S just to distinguish it from precision, which has a kind of roughly the same root. But precisely suppose means make believe it's absent. It's never actually going to go, but suppose it were gone. That's one of the moves we saw last week. Remember that at the end of our Peirce packet 5, the stock of precision, does that ring a bell? Tell me if it rings a bell. This whole thing, precision presupposes greater separation than, and there was this whole kind of spiel, and maybe that wasn't 100% clear, but that's why we're using it now, right? Precision just is, suppose it's not there, right? It's still there. That's what we mean, what I've underlined in black here. It means it's still there, but suppose it's absent. So what happens when we suppose, even though it's still going to be there, that the interpretant is going to be absent? If this entire bond vanishes, the entire bond, the whole triadic bond dissipates, then what you were dealing with was a symbol. That is, it was connected by convention. It was only the interpretant holding the whole sign together. I'll move through this quickly and then we'll practice them. That means that, however, if you suppose the interpretant absent, and this vanishes over here, this vanishes, this disappears, right? But this relation remains. Then what you're dealing with is either an index or an icon. So if the link between the sign vehicle and the object remains, even when you suppose that it's uninterpreted, then you're either dealing with an index or an icon. So for instance, even if you don't interpret the puffs of air is still hitting your ears, right? Even if you don't understand the words they mean, like, will you ferry me? Everyone heard the puffs of air when I said, will you ferry me? You just didn't understand what was going on. They were hitting you only insofar as an icon and an index, but they weren't reaching the level of symbol because you didn't know what to make of them, right? So if that's what happens, then you're dealing with an index or an icon. If the entire triadic bond vanishes, then you're dealing with a symbol. So these are instructions on how to figure out which is which. I'll go through these and then we'll practice them. If you ask yourself, what happens if you precisely suppose that the object is absent? So the object is still going to be there, but suppose it wouldn't be. What would happen? If this bond here vanishes, then what you were dealing with was an index. You actually had to have the other thing pushing against, if you will, the sign vehicle for the sign to refer. That means it was an index. And finally, the only way to delete the iconic potential of a sign vehicle is to delete that sign vehicle, and that's an icon. So if you were to summarize all of these things, the way you get to distinguish a symbol, an index, and an icon, on one level, you could say just by asking yourself whether it hinges on convention, contiguity, or similarity, right? Whether it's arbitrary, whether it's causal, or whether it's a shared quality. But you actually have something more precise in Peirce. You ask yourself this question: would the connection between the sign vehicle and the object survive a precisive deletion of the interpretant? If the answer is no, right, then you're dealing with a symbol. A symbol is a sign that cannot survive the deletion of any of its parts, let alone the interpretant. Because remember, the interpretant comes, it's the third, so we're working from the outside in, the object, and the sign vehicle, right? So the symbol, the moment you vanish, you make the interpretant vanish, the symbol itself cannot survive. So would the connection between the sign vehicle and the object survive the supposition of absence of its interpretant? No. The object, clearly no. The sign vehicle, clearly no. In the case of an index, the situation is different. An index would survive were the interpretations gone, but it cannot survive if the object is gone, and it cannot survive if the sign vehicle is gone. And an icon would survive if the interpretant was gone. It would even survive if the object was gone, and it would not survive if the sign vehicle was gone. The only way to make its potential as an icon go away is to make the sign vehicle go away itself. Because the sign vehicle has a quality, and it refers in virtue of that quality, even if there's nothing out there matching it. Even if there's not something else that looks like it, it's still going to be whatever the sign vehicle is. And so it'll always retain its iconic potential. And the only way to destroy its iconic potential is to destroy the sign vehicle itself. So the only way to delete the iconic potential, and potential here means could, right, of a sign vehicle, is to delete that sign vehicle itself. And that's one of the properties of the icon. And so this is, if you will, a third grade of clearness. It's telling you what to do. I can just tell you, right, a symbol is assigned by convention. An index is assigned by causality, and an icon is assigned by similarity. That's the second grade of clearness. It's just a definition. What you have here right now is the third grade of clearness. Experiment with the sign. Suppose its interpretant is absent. What happens? Check the results, and it'll tell you which one of these signs it is. Suppose the object is absent. What happens? Check the results, and it'll tell you what sign it is. This is something that you need to study and meditate on. When you watch the rerun, you can press pause. But right now, let me just pause myself and ask, do you have any questions about this, or is this clear? And then we're going to practice. And one of the reasons why Peirce makes such a course on great philosophers is this is a level of sophistication that's unprecedented in the history of ideas. Peirce's work on signs is, I mean, he took it to a whole new level, right? He is to semiotics what, let's say, Newton or Einstein would be to physics. So we're in a whole new different world now. Let's now practice. Practice together, because remember, pragmatism requires that you do. Let's tie all this together from now until the end of the class. Let's practice. Sign vehicle stands for object to interpretant. Let me remind ourselves those relations, right? The sign vehicle stands for an object to an interpretant. This model is familiar, yes or no? Can we just want to see, we're going to layer by layer. Thank you, my friends. I remember all I need from you is, like we did last time, right? Just a lot of hard work, right? And focus. All right, cool. Let's do an example. Example number 1. A white flag stands for surrender to the rules of war. What would happen if we supposed that the interpretant was absent? What if we supposed that there were no rules of war? What would happen to this T shape here? Which sides of the T shape would vanish? All, part? All of them would vanish. You're entirely right. All of them would vanish. The only thing that's connecting a white flag to surrender are the rules of war. If the rules of war, actually, let me use red here because that's what I was using earlier, right? If the rules of war were absent, suppose they were absent. Now, clearly, I want to make sure that we understand the red X I'm making. The rules of war do not vanish because I just put an X on them, okay? The rules of war still apply. They exist. It's a code out in the world. Do we agree? Like nothing I'm going to do right now on the screen makes the rules of war vanish. Do we agree on that? Like the fact that someone at KPU put an X on a slide, right? Yeah. Like nothing changes. Though it's just nothing's changed. But suppose that those rules weren't in effect, that they were absent. The entire thing would vanish, right? And if the entire thing would vanish, right, all of this would dissipate. All of this would be gone. The very glue that stuck the white flag to surrender would vanish. If the whole thing vanishes, then what connected the signed vehicle and the object? A convention, causation, or similarity? What connected over here the signed vehicle and the object, given that the whole thing would vanish if the interpretant were gone? Convention. Convention. And if it's convention that was holding a signed vehicle together with surrender, then that means this sign was what? So a white flag stands for surrender to the rules of war. Was that a symbol, an index, or an icon? Now have you got it? It was a symbol. Remember the tripartite division? Let me go back. Symbols are connected by convention. Indices are connected by contiguity or real contact or impact. And icons are connected by similarity. Suppose that this is absent, then this entire thing becomes absent. So what does that mean? What connects the signed vehicle to the object? It means it was a symbol connected by convention. White flag standing for surrender, that's purely arbitrary convention. On another planet, you can imagine aliens saying they surrender by farting. Like, really, there's no real reason why a white flag has to symbolize surrender. It stands for surrender just because of the rules of war. So let me say that again slowly. This is a symbol. Why? Because a white flag stands for surrender just because of the rules of war. And the test of that is that were there no rules of war, the standing for relation would vanish. Let me pause. That's our first example. Is that clear? Does everyone see that now? You could still surrender. Notice what I'm leading is that T-shape, right? Those T-shape relations, right? Surrender could still be a thing. White flags could still be a thing. So I'm not deleting these, right? So like the rules of war, right? If they were different, let's say, that's what that X means, right? Would not make white flags vanish. White flags could still exist. And you could still surrender in a world without those rules of war. But the white flag and the surrender will no longer be connected such that white flags stood for acts of surrender. The white flags would not dissipate. Surrender could still be a thing. It would not vanish. But the relation would disappear. The relation between would vanish. Because the relation is owed only two are agreeing to make it so. Right? Make it so. That's all we do. And Owen writes, without the rules of war, we cannot surrender by waving the white flag. Yeah, try that in a country that doesn't have those conventions. Like to go in another world. Like imagine a science fiction movie and the aliens are firing at you and you take out your white underwear, hopefully white, and you wave it in the sky. The aliens are going to keep firing at you. They don't understand what you're doing. They're like, look at that idiot, earthling waving his white underwear out in the air. What does he think he's doing? Because they don't have that interpretant. They're not going to stop firing and thinking you're surrendering, right? Arjun writes, so it can be said that the white flag is a symbol because of its intent to mean something. That is accurate. That is true. To say a sign holds meaning based on what the intent of it is, yeah, for symbolic signs, that's exactly right. Not so much the intent, but the convention, right? Because whether or not there was ever an intent behind associating the white flag and the object is a question for historians to answer. Like, I don't know that anyone ever sat down and said, okay, folks, when we're going to go be out there and kill each other, let's agree that a white flag will mean surrender. I don't think there was ever an intent. A historian could clarify that for me. Maybe it's a purely accidental reason why white flags have come to stand for surrender. Who the hell knows? So not so much intent, but purely convention. We've decided that it is such. What its origins are, that's for historians to figure out. Arjun, do you see that? Yeah, Andrew writes, so the interpretant is just the thing that observes or connects the relationship between the two things, not necessarily a person. That's right. Notice this is not a person. The rules of war are not a person. Clearly, instantiate them every time we follow them, but they exist apart from you or me, Andrew. Like if you die, Andrew, the rules of war exist. And if I die, the rules of war exist. They're above and beyond you and I. They're a pattern. They're a pattern out in the world that's existing out there and replicating. That is it. Not necessarily a person. Good observation, Andrew. Remember, that's why we switch from interpretant to we don't want interpreter. We talk about interpretants, right? Ariana says, you can say a red stop sign is a symbol, stopping the vehicle with the object, and the interpretant would be, is the rules and laws of the road. Yeah, that's exactly right, Ariana. That would be another example. And the reason why I'm using the white flag is because I'll keep reusing it in an interesting way, but you got it. Owen writes, I understand we need to move on, but what the hell does it mean when everyone has a different interpretant? Then there's no agreed upon code, Owen. If everyone does that, right, there's no habit or pattern in the way that I've just described when I was talking about how the rules of war exist apart from Andrew and I. If everyone does that, it's not a shared code. So maybe you on different occasions could recognize what you mean, but you could not possibly communicate, and there will be no grounds for social agreement. Yeah, so let's say Owen, every time, let's say it's a code that only Owen knows, every time Owen hears, you know, the word banana, you know, he does this twice with his fingers, right? That's the kind of, he's associated that. Whenever I hear the word banana, I do this. Owen, you're the only person on the planet who would do that, you know? It's like, what would that accomplish? You could do that. You institute that connection. Every time I hear the word banana, I do this. I snap my fingers twice. All right, cool. You could do that. And you could hold that constant, right? But that would not be a shared code. It would be of absolutely no utility beyond you, even if it has utility for you. Arjun, I don't know what that means. Let's move on. Put that on the shelf. Put that on the shelf. All right, here's example number 2. Look at what we have here again, a white flag once again. So same bloody thing, a white flag, right? This time it stands for, it is windy. A white flag stands for, it is windy, to an interpretant which consists in dressing warmly. Now ask yourself, if we suppose the interpretant absent, if you don't dress warmly, what happens to the T shape? Does it all vanish? Do parts of it vanish? Yeah, Reese and Andrew, you got it. The relationship between the sun vehicle and the object still exists. This vanishes, but this stays just fine. The wind will still hit the white flag, even if you don't take stock of it to determine how you're going to dress. How warmly should I dress today? You look out the window, you see a white flag. It looks windy because it's flapping in the wind. The wind hitting the white flag doesn't require your recognition. It was there before you turned to look outside, and it will keep flapping in the wind even if you don't look outside. So irrespective of the interpretant, this relationship here between the object and the sign vehicle holds. Of course, that relationship is a causal interaction which you might want to learn from, because the white flag, we agree, doesn't move on its own. White flags don't start flapping for no reason, right? They're not animate things. They flap only when they're acted upon by some other second thing, secondness, namely wind. And you can be smart and you don't actually see wind. Let's just agree on this. Has anyone ever seen wind with your eyes? Not feel wind with your skin. Seen wind. Have you ever seen wind? You won't. Exactly right. You can't see wind. What can you see? Say it's windy outside. You can't see wind. What makes you say that? You looked out the window. It's not with your ears. It's not with your skin. You're using your eyeballs. You say it's windy outside. How can you tell? Don't say feel it, because I'm giving you, you can't touch it against your skin. And when you're looking out the window, you've said this before, you look out the window and you say it's windy outside. Yeah. And look at what John says. Yeah, things are being blown around. Exactly. You see what it does to other things. Exactly. So the white flag is a first standing in relation to a second, the object, namely the wind, and they're having secondness here, right? Who is it? Nav talking about secondness, right? We talked about hitting. That's secondness right here, right? Secondness. They're hitting one another. and is hitting one another can actually be grounds for you to say, hey, I can take the white flag to stand for the object. And in fact, you have no choice but to, because wind is not something you can see. It's something you can feel with your other senses, perhaps, and that's fair enough. But in the case of looking at it through the window, which is a more interesting case, right? You need to use the something moving, whether it's leaves, yeah, Owen writes leaves flying, something, right, to stand for the wind. Now you do this so habitually, and as soon as you see the winds, the leaves or the white flag or something flapping in the wind, you decide to yourself, I'm going to dress warmly. But what if you didn't dress warmly? What would happen to wind? The relation between the things being flown around and the things pushing them around, would it vanish? Yes or no? This other black line here, would it go away? Like nothing. Like, I'm sorry to say, but the wind doesn't care about you. Wind doesn't stop. Yeah, exactly right, Owen. Wind doesn't stop for us failing to dress warm. Effing men. You got it, right? And why is that? Because it's a dyadic relation, and dyadic relations don't require triadic relations in the case of, so what sign are we dealing with, right? So given everything we've said, what connects the sign vehicle and the object in this case? The white flag stands for wind, to dress warmly. What are we dealing with? Symbol, index, or icon? Are we dealing with a symbol? We can rule that out. Two things are hitting one another, right? It's certainly not an index, right? Certainly not a symbol. It could be an index or an icon, and in this case, it's an index because the white flag and the object are connected in virtue of an impact, right? They're hitting one another. That index, if we want to get more complicated, we don't want to keep it too complicated right now, subsumes an icon because there's also a degree to which it's windy that co-varies with the degree to which the white flag actually moves around. So actually it subsumes an icon, but it's an index. It's connected by contiguity, touching, impact, right? Real connection. Real in the sense of mind-independent connection. Real in the sense of interpretant-independent connection, right? The kind that doesn't require this in order to exist, right? Let me pause here because it's hopefully with layers and layers, it's getting clearer. Is that clear, everyone? Example number 2, why it's an index. I can feel even at a remove, I think I can start seeing the lights come on a bit more, which is nice because you have to go with me at the beginning. It's never 100% clear at the start. Just like your life, you don't even remember the first 4 years of your life. It was all a blur. Inquiries like that. Example number 3. The white flag that we know and love stands for a sheet of printing paper. It stands for a sheet of printing paper to kids pretending to work in an office. Let's have some fun. If I delete the interpretant, what happens to that T-shaped relation, that triadic relation? If the kids don't pretend to work in an office, would the white flag still bear this relation to sheets of printing paper? What happens to the T shape? I just delete, I suppose the thirdness absent. If you didn't pretend to work in an office, if no one was using white flags to stand for sheets of printing paper, would white flags still bear some sort of connection to sheets of printing paper? Yes or no? Let me rephrase that and then you can answer. If the kids weren't playing office, like playing house or playing office, would white flags still bear a relation to sheets of printing paper? They would. The correct answer is yes. Let me go back to the reading. Here's why. This is the part where it's going to bring a lot of clarity, but I want to go back. All right, let's go back to the icon. This is our Peirce packet number 6, page 1. two blue objects are by that very fact in relation to one another. A relation, not necessarily a causal relation. Nothing here specifies what kind of relation, but it's a relation in this case of similarity. Yeah. The mere fact, like let's say, okay, so let's say there's a blue thing here on the earth right now. So look around your surroundings, see a blue thing. And in a galaxy far, far away that no humans ever seen or ever will see, there's another blue thing. Are those blue things related in reality? And let's not prejudge what relation we're talking about, right? Because it can include similarity relations, right? They're related. All blue things are related to one another in virtue of their shared quality, their shared blueness, right? There's a real relation there, not real in the sense that they're hitting each other, but real in the sense that they have a shared quality. There's a shared quality. Yeah, that's right. And the quality blue is not a quality that you can categorize. So here's the thing. I love the expression that one says, under the category of blue, yes. But here's the thing. When you categorize blueness, right, you say this blue thing and that blue thing, and you group them together, does the ground that permits you to group them exist before your categorization or only in virtue of you linking them together? Before. You discover those relations. You don't invent them. There are relations we discover and there are relations we invent. You invent the relations that are symbols. Those you invent. You have to invent the relation between a white flag and surrender, but you discover relations between blue things. Those are not for you to invent. They're for you to discover. Right? All right, so let's go back to where we were. All right. Kids, let's go back. A white flag stands for a sheet of printing paper to kids pretending to work in an office. If the kids don't pretend to work in an office, what happens to this over here? Question mark. What happens to this relation? Does it stay or does it vanish? This particular one here. Stay or vanish? Agreed. It vanishes. It vanishes. Okay. Now, what happens to this? Let's now, we deleted this. Now, what happens if I suppose that the object, the secondness, is absent? If the sheets of printing paper in the world are destroyed, what happens to the potential to be similar with relation that I've highlighted with this arrow? If you delete this, what happens with this arrow here? And by arrow here, I mean the potential to be similar with. We have to be ultra clear now. This is where a little modal logic is going to help us, right? Potential to be similar versus is similar. I'm asking only about the potential to be similar. What would happen? Would it vanish? It could still potentially be similar to anything that likes it. Yeah, exactly. That's the reality of the coulds in Peirce, right? It can be similar even if it doesn't exist, right? The only way to get rid of this line over here, so let me pause. How do I get rid of this potential to be similar with other white things? What's the one thing I could put an X on to get rid of that potential to be similar with other white things? What's where, because I could put an X here, I could put an X here, but where would I have to put an X to kill this line over here in red? On the flag, I got to kill whiteness itself. Like it's got to be gone completely. There's no symbols here. There's no symbols. What we're dealing with now, right, is something entirely different. Earlier, we were dealing with an index when we were looking at the relation to wind. And the relation between the white flag and a white thing, like what's the glue here, right? No, yeah, what's the glue? Ask yourself that. That's another way of asking a question. What's the glue? Is it similarity, causality, or convention? What's the glue? Similarity, causality, or convention? It's similarity. Yeah. Reese writes, isn't that the same with the interpretant line? There could also be something potentially. Yes, of course. Everything that could be related to something else, if in fact it is, also could be interpreted. That's what happens after the kids discovered that there was a relation. They realized, well, we're out of paper, but we can use the white flag. That's what happened when Owen categorized blue things. They stand ready to be noticed. Exactly. Everything stands ready to be noticed in the same way that you can have molecules with an empty valence bond, right? Waiting to connect with something else. Relations of similarity don't require something to be similar with insofar as they have the potential to be similar with something else. And the moment they are similar with something else, stand ready to be interpreted for real, but they maintain that potential to be interpreted. Every phenomenon is potentially interpretable. There's always that potential valence bond over here. So there's a potential bond, there's a potential valence bond here. When it becomes actual, then there's a potential valence bond here, and it becomes actual. Reese, does that make sense? Is light slowly dawning on that next layer of complexity? So if a tree falls in the woods, right, the tree falls in the wood in the sense of secondness, and it stands ready to be interpreted. It also had the potential to be interpreted, right? And if there's, let's say, the example I like to use, so what we were dealing with, let's just clarify this. So now what connects the sign vehicle and the object, and what connects it was an iconic similarity, right? There was a similarity here. One of the examples I like to use is the Sphinx, all right? So before we sort of sold a lot of junk and tourists, because I've never been to Egypt, but I'm going to presume there's a lot you can get. You can leave Egypt with your own Sphinx. When I went to Belgium, to Brussels, I had my little mannequin piss. They sell them everywhere, right? I'm sure every tourist can go back home with a little Sphinx in their pocket, right? We all agree. Like you can take your own little Sphinx of whatever size, right, at the souvenir shop in the airport. Like you stop on the way, you do a stop in Egypt. I'm sure you can buy a stupid little not Phoenix. What am I called? The Sphinx. Yeah, the Sphinx. Yeah, the Sphinx, right? So we can all get a stupid Sphinx at the airport, all right? But let's go back at a time. Go with me on this. This is going to be my Sphinx. I can do it right. That's not bad. That's really not bad. That's really actually pretty cute. I'm doing okay. Does the Sphinx have one of those cool beards? I don't know. All right, let's give him one. All right. Let's go back to a time when the Sphinx, it looks like a puppy now, but it's supposed to have a real human face. All right. Let's go back to a time when the Sphinx was a unique object in the world. Okay. So do you agree after they made the Sphinx, there was no tourist trap junk? Can everyone go with me on this? So you're there in your mind, right? A time when there was nothing else like, okay, I love that expression. There was nothing else like it. There was nothing else like it. Okay, so there was no second Sphinx. This was the only one. The only one. By virtue of being what it is, by having its quality, it had the potential to be similar to what? Even then, when there was nothing else like it, by virtue of having its quality, it is, after all, the Sphinx. It is that and not something else. It had the potential to be similar to, so let S be here, similar to what? Not just other rocks, but other rocks with what shape? What kind of shape? Not just statues, not any statues. It's the specific quality of the Sphinx, right? Could be similar to Sphinx-shaped statues, exactly. Sphinx-like object, right? Sphinx-like objects. It had the potential to be similar to any other Sphinx-like object, and this is the part that's mind-bending, whether or not those Sphinx-like objects in point of fact exist. You see that? That potential, that iconic potential. It was a potential icon from the moment it had a quality. It did not require secondness, that is an actual other thing hitting against it in order to have that iconic potential. It was an icon the moment it had a quality. It had the potential to have a similarity to any Sphinx-like object, and the existence not required. Wind, hitting of wind, a flag, existence is required. Because the wind really has to hit the flag. No wind, no flag movement. No wind, no flag movement. But if I go and let's say I'm a devout Egyptian god worshiper and I destroy all of the Sphinx-like objects that currently exist. Because right now we agree the world is littered with tourist trap junk, and I go around and I destroy in a violent fit of fury the blasphemy of everyone who's ever made other Sphinx-like objects, and I destroy them all. Look, this is me going at the airport in Cairo and smashing all of the Sphinx-like objects and then chasing down every tourist who ever bought them and destroy them. And me and my congregation of iconoclasts have successfully rid the world of all Sphinxes except the genuine article. Can we get rid of this arrow? Can we ever get rid of the potential of it to be like something else? Agreed. There's nothing you and I can do to smash that arrow. We can't do this. What's the closest we can do to getting rid of that arrow? What will we have to do to get rid of the iconic potential of this one shape? Smash the Sphinx. Destroy the sign vehicle. Folks, is this fun? Are you getting it? Icons have their significant virtue in virtue of the quality of the sign vehicle and nothing else. Philosophy of signs. It's just so... Oh, I'm loving it. Thank you for that. Nice to see finally tied the last 2 weeks to this. Makes it more tangible. We're going to make it ultra tangible. Yeah. Look, we're going to have a plethora of examples. You know why? Because I'm a good teacher and I love you, Ariana. Right? And love all of y'all. All right. And notice I want to give a final, yay, good. I want to give a final qualification here just to be really clear. We prescind all three connections. But all three connections are operative. So this part here that I've written is massively important. All right. So we prescind, that is, we suppose absent. All right. But let me be entirely clear. All of the connections are still there. It's not because you suppose them absent that they go away. All right. So this was an exercise in conceptual analysis. But all of the three parts have to be there. A sign has to be an interpreted sign. It has to have an object. All of the lessons that we learned about the triadic character of the sign still holds, but we can go piecemeal and say, what happens if the interpretant were absent? What happened if the object were absent? What happens if the sign vehicle were absent? And that lets us figure out which sort of sign connection we're looking at, whether it's symbolic, indexical, or iconic. But this was just a warning. This was just a thought experiment. You're never going to have a similarity relation that's not interpreted, because to have it be a sign even is precisely to say that it stands for something else to something else. So you're always going to have that nuance in Peirce, right? This was going below the threshold that technically triadicity does not permit us to do. All right. So to summarize, this dumb thing in the world, this can be a symbol of surrender, is an index of the wind, irrespective of anyone notices it, and must be an icon of anything white, or triangular for that matter, because so long as it has its qualities, with the qualities come prepackaged an iconic potential to refer by similarity to anything that would be like it, irrespective of that thing to be there. Let me go over those things again. This same thing can be a symbol of surrender, is an index of the wind, and must be an icon of anything white or rectangular. So if you ask yourself the question, what is this? That question admits of three answers depending on the facet, if you will, like a prism. You know, when Newton was doing his prism experiments, prism, to break down the light spectrum into different colors, the spectrum of light into its different colors, right? You can think of semiosis, the action of signs, as being like a white light that we can break down into all of its colors, if you will. And so this one thing can mean different things to different things, depending on which aspect we grab it with. A purely imputed aspect, right? We impute or arbitrarily associate it with surrender. We see that it bears a real causal relation to the wind, and we understand that it would be resembling anything like it, and we can use that resemblance like the kids who couldn't find any sheets of paper but wanted to play at the office. Another layer, and we're going to give you some more concrete layer. But Area and everybody else, is the concreteness starting to really get there? The concrete setting? Because we're pouring concrete, and it then starts to set, right? Well, my friends, you've come this far. Let's play a game of Spot the Sign Relation. Is everybody ready? Tell me if you're ready. We're going to play a game together. All right, and by the way, no polls. We'll just use the chat bar. I'm not that sophisticated. Thank you, Shen. Owen, thank you for the claps. Okay, so just so you know, if we make a mistake, how many points do we lose today? It's like a game show, but what do we lose? How many points? If you make a mistake right in class, how many points do I take off? Absolutely nothing. You learn. Yes, that's right, my friends. So it's okay. And if you're wrong, then just find out why you were wrong, right? Now, I want to say at the outset that there's, remember, there's a trivial sense in which, because like the light spectrum is white, right? The semiosis, in a sense, because our semiosis is invariably, as humans, soaking in symbolicity. So it's symbolic in some sense, but it's not just symbolic. There's a sense in which each sign, you might argue, has all three dimensions. At any rate, you know that if it's symbolic, it presupposes indexical. Indexical presupposes iconic. But what we're going to do now, when I say spot the sign relation, you might rephrase this as spot the dominant sign relation. Does everyone understand that nuance, right? I want to say spot the dominant sign relation, the one that is most dominant or important or stands out in the active interpretation that makes this a sign. Okay? Does everyone understand that nuance? Like, there's going to be not anything goes here. There's a right and wrong answer, right? But it's the one that's going to be foregrounded. A little bit like, right? If you take this, when the kids are playing and they take this to be a sheet of paper, there's still some sense in which they understand that this is a flag and not just any white thing. Their associations with surrender and so on haven't vanished, right? But when they're using it for its whiteness and rectangularity, they don't have to worry about the surrendering part, right? And likewise, if you just want to surrender, you don't really care that it's in the wind. You don't really care about that. You can grab your underwear and you can wave it with your hands so that the aliens stop shooting at you. And of course, if the aliens don't understand the code, don't do that on an alien world. They're not going to surrender, right? And if you raise your hands up, that's probably also not going to work because there's probably an element of convention in that as well, although it's a more iconic sign. Showing your hands without a weapon is a more iconic sign than waving a white flag, right? I'd be curious to see what the origins of the white flag are, by the way. I have no clue, but that's not for the philosopher of sign to say. That's for the historian. All right, since we are ready, here we go. We're going to do like 20 of these. All right, so just to give you a sense of how much time we're going to work on this, 20. Go. No rush. This is a sign. Is it an iconic sign, an indexical sign, or a symbolic sign? Is it a sign that hinges on similarity, causality, or convention? And just to zoom in, what are we looking at? Can anyone see what we're looking at? It's actually so hard to discern. It's a bug. This is a bug. How does this bug make a living? This bug makes a living, by the way. It's not a leaf, it's a bug. It makes its living, Andrew's right. It makes its living by camouflaging. What is camouflage? What's it doing? What's camouflage? It's hoping that predators are going to take it as yeah, it's an icon. You got it. Yeah. Icon, right? Yeah. It's really hoping, isn't this a cool icon? I bet you didn't think about that when you were thinking about icons, huh? This semiotic stuff, this philosophy of science stuff is completely wild. By the end of our quiz today, I'm going to end with a video and your mind's going to be blown. I guarantee you. All right. This is an icon, right? This insect stands for, complete my sentence, stands for, so insect, ... stands for, fill in the blank, a leaf. 2 stands for a leaf 2. What's after the 2? A predator or anything that's duped. And it hinges, its whole livelihood hinges on this iconic semiosis, right? If the predator, if there was no real relation between the leaves over here, like think about it, right? If there was no real mind-independent similarity between it and the leaves around it, and it even looks rusty, do we agree? It even looks like not even nice leaves at that, like not even fresh ones you would want to eat. The predator wants meat. It doesn't want a vegetable thing, right? It stands for the leaves to a predator that just passes by. The predator is just like, I'm uninterested, right? That's the interpretant, is the proof's in the pudding. The predator literally can't spot it or doesn't care and moves on, right? That's an icon. Let me pause. It's an icon. Is that clear, everyone? Type in clear if that's clear. Questions or comments if you got questions or comments. 1 down, 19 to go. Next up, spot the dominant sign relation. Icon, index, symbol. Which how many things in the world have to be there for the dirt to have this indentation? Can this dirt have the indentation it has if there were only dirt in the universe? If the dirt was alone, could it have this shape, this indentation? How many things in the world have to exist for it to have this quality? I mean, count the things in the universe that have to exist in order for it to be indented the way it is. 2, 1, the dirt, and 2, this non-dirt, right? That has to, but right now it's not potential reason, it's actual. Something really did hit it. Do you see that? So that's what makes it an index. It really was hit. Now, there's an interesting nuance though. This is both an icon and an index, going back to the idea that indices presuppose icons. So insofar as you can say, I take this as a sign that something was here. This didn't happen on its own. It's an index. But you can also take it as bearing a resemblance to what? What does this resemble? What would the resemblance then allow you to figure out? A paw. It resembles a paw. And it shares a quality in the same way that the Sphinx shared a quality with all of the little stupid Sphinxes in the tourist trap stores, right? There's a shared quality. So it's an icon. The icon wouldn't have existed had it not been for the index, right? But now you just know that something happened, and then you use the icon to figure out what happened. Like when trackers are working through the forest and they see a broken branch. So there's a branch, right? One moment it's like this, and the next moment, let's say they find a broken branch. It's broken over here, like it's broken. The branch, they know if it's broken, let's say this is the soil, and the branch was broken. They know from this breaking of the branch that something hit it. But there's no icon. It's a pure index, if you will. Something broke the twig. Something was here. So you say this is a sign that something was here. And if you're a tracker, what do you do in the forest? The forest is teeming with signs, and you interpret the signs, right? And you say something was here. Ask the tracker based on the twig what was here. Maybe if the tracker is a great tracker, they'll say, well, because of the height level from the ground, it was, let's say, a possum that broke the twig, or it was a bear because, you know, the taller the animal. So there's some sort of quality as how high the twig was broken, but it doesn't convey that much information. Here you have an index and an icon. An index insofar as it's a sign that something hit it, and an icon insofar as it has a shared quality with the paw. And then the interpretants just are the myriad of things we can do on basis of that association. The myriad of responses we can do to that, including other animals and trackers and hunters and whatnot. Does everyone see that? If that's clear, write clear. If you got a question, ask your question. Good. We're playing along really well. So how do we put this into a sentence? I have no clue. What do you mean? Owen, I'm not sure what you're asking. You could say this. I mean, I'm not sure. Like, you could say print stands for paw to tracker. Print stands for paw to tracker. Yeah. Yeah. And there you go. Yeah. Full of science. And the world is like that. The world, by the way, when we end this class today, and hopefully when we end this entire course, you'll understand that Peirce's vision of the world, it just makes you want to have goosebumps. It's such an incredible world. All right, so it's a hipster. Don't focus just on the tattoos, the whole package. It's a hipster. Icon, index, symbol. Hi, I'm a hipster. Would aliens recognize this as a hipster? Would someone in 1912 recognize this as a hipster? The symbol. This is the symbol. It's like, hi world. Look at these conventions. I'm in that group. I'm that kind of person. I'm a hipster, right? I get my knuckles tattooed, right? I'm a hipster. A symbol held together by convention. Only convention makes this person a hipster. Absent the cultural code, this person is not a hipster. He is what he is. Still some guy with ink under his skin and, you know, the hair is shaved in a certain way, but not a hipster. Is that clear, everyone? That was a no-brainer, I think. Depended on culture so heavily, right? There's a code there. Without the code, he's just something in the world. He's still something in the world, but he's more than that. He's a hipster. Focus on this part. Anglerfish. With a special emphasis on this. What's this for, by the way? Those of you who know about anglerfish, what's this for? Why did evolution endow this creature with this weird thing? It's a lure. And what's luring prey, right? How do you lure prey? Prey will be like, oh yes, you have the right thing. I'm going to go straight to your mouth. Is that how it works? Like how does this work? Why does this lure prey? It's a lure, yes. Why? How does it lure prey? Because it mimics something. It looks like it is similar to something else. It's similar to what? It looks like another little fish. And of course, if you think, oh, this is a fish, this stands for a fish too, and then he's going to eat you right as soon as you come. It's an icon. You got it, Ariana. It's an icon. It's an icon. Not just of light, but of bioluminescent fish. This is supposed to resemble bioluminescent fish. And animals, he makes a living. Earlier we saw a prey making a living from an icon. Here's a predator making a living from an icon. How you like that for a loop? It's not just in the arsenal of prey to defend themselves with icons. This is a predator making a living from an icon. Right? And of course, you have to be in the vicinity of it to see it. So in some trivial sense, it's an index, right? Yeah. The light stands for food to a fish. That's exactly right. You got it, Andrew. Right? Yeah. Yeah. Stands for food to. And then of course he's banking on it. And it's like you're going to go over to eat it, and then he's going to eat you. Arr. Exactly. You got it. Is that clear, everyone? Yup. Good. All right, next up. What's the dominant relation here? Iconic, indexical, symbolic. Let's go for, okay, so normally the interpretant, I think, if you see this and you're a woman, the interpretant is to like, go, holy cow, I'm pregnant, right? Okay, but what if this is unseen? So let's erase the lady. I'm going to erase the lady. Erase the interpretant. Delete the interpretant. Delete the interpretant. The relation between this strip of paper and the P, what happens to it? I'm deleting the lady. I'm deleting this new mom. I'm deleting her exclamation, her Facebook posts. I'm deleting all recognition. This here, Its relation to the P and the hormones in the P. The human chorionic gonadotropin, the HCG, whatever it is, it's tracking. What happens to it? Does it survive the deletion of all this? No more women looking at this. It survives. It's an index. That's exactly right. It's an index which, when interpreted, prompts a new mom to go, holy cow. But the going holy cow is not what makes this line appear. Like, what makes this line appear is a real chemical reaction between the P and the properties of this strip of paper. That is it. It's an index. It's an index. An interpreted index has to be interpreted because otherwise it's not even a sign. But it's an index nevertheless. It's not held together by convention. Irrespective of the conventions, this was something invented or discovered. This reaction between this and the P. Invented or discovered? Did we invent or discover that reaction? Discovered. Discovered. Exactly. Hipsters, invented or discovered? Yeah. Big difference. Big difference. Big difference. All right. Good. Very neat, very neat, very neat. And notice how this is important, right? Clearly, this is always going to be interpreted. So there's always going to be, let's say, well, not always a human in the loop, because we saw situations where there wouldn't be a human in the loop, but there's always going to be an interpretant generated. But is the interpretant, this is the crucial question, is the interpretant what's holding together the sign? Right? Yeah. The hipsters are invented, the link between the two lights. Okay, so there's an element of convention. It's true. Remember what I said earlier. You have to know how to read this, right? So you have to know how to read this. So they have instructions. So it's not like just a symbol, right? But it's predominantly, like if we focus just on this, right? Predominantly an index. Yeah, yeah. So you need instructions. Yeah, for sure. Because this is a test line and you need to know what you're doing. By the way, trackers have to train you. If you're going in the forest and you're tracking stuff, do we agree that's a skill and you have to learn it from someone? Like, you're not going to figure this out on your own, right? Someone has to initiate you into this practice, but the practice consists precisely in initiating you away from the practice. This, you have to be initiated into a practice, and nothing but the practice holds it together. This doesn't care about us one bit. It's happening in the abyssal depths, and it doesn't care about our conventions one bit. Right? And this, you have to be initiated into the practice, but the practice is not what determines whether or not the strip appears or disappears. Is that clear, everyone? That's where we go with the whole, trying to delete the parts to see what stays, right? It's like, of course but like, were I absent, what would happen, right? Yeah, cool. And of course, that's what I said. You're always going to work from your human experience. But so what? All right, what's this? If you don't know anything about culture, what do you make of this? This is clever. Someone say, this is clever. You don't know what you're looking at. What are we looking at? Someone enlighten us. Someone who can decode this. An abomination, a hybrid. I don't know, the abomination sounds like a monster. It's kind of cute and clever. What are we looking at? What is this? This is a hybrid of what? What is this? It's a Star Wars princess. It's a Disney princess mixed with Boba Fett. It's Snow White and Boba Fett. Right? Why is it that some people know what they're looking at and some don't? Why is it that if I showed this to Joan of Arc from the 12th century, she wouldn't know what she's looking at in the same way that you do? So this is what sign? What sign are we looking at? Symbol. You got it, Owen. Right. This is a clever symbol that's piggyback. It's writing piggyback on other symbols. It's like two made up characters looking like, there's an iconic aspect. This is a person looking like two made up characters who understands that you understand that there's a code, and that she's cleverly manipulating those codes by dressing in this manner and saying, you're going to understand that I'm a Boba Fett princess, Disney hybrid, whatever you want to call this, right? Cosplay, something like that. Good. Good. And it's held together by convention. Absent the conventions, she's just some lady who's, you know, just there with stuff. Yeah. A Mandalorian. But actually, look, the colors, I don't know if it's Mandalorian or Boba Fett. That's an open question. Yeah. No. All right. Dominantly, what are we looking at here? Ariana is correct. An icon. And notice that icons, and the reason why I chose this picture, they have degrees of precision. And I don't mean precision, I mean precision. There's a degree here, there's not much, but it's still resembling, right? Whoever it would be resembling. You can't tell from an analysis of this sign vehicle alone if there was a sitter. That is, if there was a person indexically there at the time. But you know who would resemble it? Who would resemble this guy? Whoever would resemble him. If in point of fact there was someone, it's also an index because it's a sign that there was a person present, and then a painter was looking and reporting back on the experience by going back and forth, and they had to be in the same room. But it's predominantly an index, an icon, and I wanted to show you here how you can have degrees of similitude. Very low degree of similitude on the left and very high degree of similitude on the right. Stickman still looks kind of like a man, right? Stickman still 4 limbs, man. That's us. 4 limbs in the trunk. Last I checked, that's the basic outline of us, right? All right. This dude faceprint would faceprint in the snow would be an index. Yeah, Owen. What is this? What does this stand for? To the animals that it's addressing. What does this stand for to the animals that this is addressing? A mate. Yeah. Is there any relation between the size of your tails and the size of your something else? The size of your feathers and the size of your organ? Kind of, not really. Maybe, but I don't know. Well, you can't tell right away, right? And it's like, no, not really. If there is, then it's tracking it like it would an index, but predominantly this is what? In that animal world. It's a symbol. Look at me. I'm a great mate. Says who? Check out my feathers. I'm going to be a good mate for you. It's like, wow, these feathers stand for good mate to females. Looking for a mate. All right, that is it. And then they interpret this with a degree of specificity that we don't share. They care about this. This is like, they would rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 and be like, this peacock, you know, he's a Brad Pitt. Check him out, man. Look at those dots over here. Aren't they perfect? Be like, who knows, man? But we're not part of that life world. A scar. Index. You can discover a scar, you don't invent it, and you might not even notice you have a scar. It doesn't require a convention or an interpretation. What cut it? I don't know, but something happened, like the broken twig. Something cut it. It didn't happen on its own. This is a sign of something. What? Well, let's find out. Right? And forensic investigation will be trying to recreate the object that made it. He was present, but you can find out a scar. Sometimes you go on an outing and you scar yourself in the woods and you only come back at home and you realize, crap, something scarred me. You don't even know what happened, but you know something happened. What's this? And by that, I mean the scent. You got it, Ariana. Ariana, John, whoever else, can you write stands for 2 and plug in the parts, the 3 parts? Someone try that out. Write the triadic relation here. I'll do it too. Yeah, you got it, John. It's an icon. And notice icons aren't just images, right? They hinge on similarity, but it's multimodal. Like this is, yeah. And put the 2 as well, Ariana. Don't forget the 2, because they do stand for It's not, oh, and Ariana, you got the other way around. It's not the marshmallow stands for the perfume. It's the perfume that stands for the marshmallow. Just fine tune that. It's the smell that stands for it. Yeah, yep, 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 yep. Good. What's this? A symbol. By the way, I looked this up. This is a symbol for biohazard. And there's really absolutely no reason why this is not at all an icon. Like there's not even, like we call this an icon. Like if you Google this, it's like an icon. It's not an icon in the strict semiotic sense. There's really nothing about this thing. I looked it up. I've tried to, there's no reason why this stands for biohazard. It's really a pure symbol. Pure, 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 pure. There's like nothing there. It's not like, you know, washroom and it shows a toilet or something. There's some iconic dimension there. You know, there's really nothing there, right? I looked it up. It's pure, pure symbol. Biohazard, only to those who know, right? Measles spots. Yeah, an index. Symptoms are an index of a disease. This is an index of what's coursing through this kid's bloodstream. And symptomatology in a medical doctor just precisely consists in taking this to stand for measles. So spots stand for measles to parent or doctor. This is the stupidest one. What is this index? What is this index finger? It's pointing, and it's an index. And he has to point to ... and you have to complete that, right? We don't know what he's pointing to, but he's pointing to something. Now, there's a convention, right, which cats will never understand, which is rather annoying, that when we point to something, you're not supposed to look at the finger, you're supposed to look away from the finger. But once you have that convention in place, the index works perfectly fine. Other fingers now. What's this? Yeah. And notice, fingers are not just fingers in semiotics, right? It's a symbol. It's a symbol of what? What's it stand for? What do we say when we do that? Peace, peace. Y'all understand this because you've got the code, right? It also is an icon of anything that would be V-shaped, right? Yeah. Invariably, if it has a quality, it would resemble anything that's V-shaped, true, right? But it's predominantly a symbol. And what's the relation between V and peace? Like, I don't know. There's this Stromae song. He says, like, everyone's doing the peace sign, but does the V stand for violence? I don't know. Like, what the hell, right? What's this? An icon. It really does resemble the outline of Africa. The fact that this one stands out from the others also calling your attention. There's an indexical component. It's calling your attention to, yeah, it's an index as well. It's saying, look at this continent in particular, that one pops out. If the whole thing was gray, it'd be more purely an icon. The fact that it's trying to have something stand out, that makes there's an indexical component as well, right? Pay attention to this, right? So there's an indexical component as well. And of course, there's a conventional aspect because maps have to be taken as maps. But once it's understood to be a map, then it hinges on its similarity. There is a real, like maps can be accurate or inaccurate. You can't just make up whatever you want. The outline of the continents are exactly what they are at any scale, right? Let's go for another one. Let's see over here. This stands for what? In virtue, looked or not looked. What does this stand for? It's an index. Mercury dilates in step with and is causally interacted by ambient temperature. You can take the mercury line to stand for the temperature. Yeah. Temperature also not visible. This renders the invisible visible. Wow. You can do that? Yeah. Signs allow us to render the invisible visible, just like flags in the wind. An index and an icon. Agreed. And notice if it's an index and an icon, it's sub-interpretant, right? It didn't require us noticing it. It went on just fine. That relation it had, right? Every bone's gone, but it's been replaced by the shapes. It's kind of like the paw print. Kind of like the paw print. Focus on the words that are underlined. All the words are symbols, but the words that are underlined do something more than just being symbols. Yeah. How would you know which car we're talking about? The guy who hit that car. How could you know what that picks out? What would have to be the circumstances? If someone uttered this, the guy who hit that car, that's going to be informative to you under only one condition. What condition? So if we utter this, the guy who hit that car was drunk. How are you going to figure out which car we're talking about? If I'm going to utter this, what are the conditions under which I have to utter this for you to pick out which car I want to refer to? I would need to point at the car, or at least be in the presence of the car. Exactly. You'd have to be in the context, right? I'd have to be there. I can add more symbols to make the context clear, but this is an indexical term. It's a symbol with an indexical component. And when we say he, who's he? If you have to replace the word he by something that you have resources to replace it with right now, the guy, it's the guy, the same guy, right? You don't know his name, but you can replace the he with the guy who hit the car was ugly too. Do we agree? Based on the resources I have right now, I could say the guy. So the way this one works is a really interesting sign. This points out into the world, and this points out back to the earlier parts of the sentence. And the pointing here is an indexical pointing. Is that clear, everyone? Can you see the pointing happening in the sentence? Cool. If you've done critical thinking with me, I always say substitute your indexicals whenever you can to get greater clarity when we do argument analysis. Icon, index, symbol. OMG. Yeah. It's a symbol, all right. We're going to end on this one. Does this look familiar to anyone? Say yes if it is, no if it isn't. Meanwhile, I'm going to set up a video. I told you I'd blow your mind with the video. Go to the Moodle page and watch this video. Okay, so I'm going to there's a video right underneath our Peirce Packet 6. Reread the Peirce Packet 6, even if it's only 3 pages, because the things it says are very condensed, and it will make, hopefully, and I think so, a lot more sense in light of the exercises that we did today. At the end of the reading, I have shown you the full picture. I told you that it would show you the full picture. What we've learned today is located in a much bigger picture. So iconic, indexical, and symbolic relations is part of a much bigger picture. This is what the bigger picture looks like. It ends up being a distinction into 10 parts. So Peirce's account of sign action is actually far more sophisticated than what I've taught you today. You have that in the reading. Have a look at it as best as you can. You're not expected to understand all of this. I just want you to see it. So I've just put it in there for that reason and to show how it breaks down into 10 different varieties of signs based on their level of complexity and so on. So have a look at that. What you need to do now, study for the exam, put yourself in the zone on game day, and prepare for the midterm. But before we do that, have a look also at that video. And I swear to God, this will blow your mind. If you don't know what this is, if you know, it will still blow your mind, because I know this and it always blows my mind. So it's extremely incredible. And at some point, we're going to take the time to think about the ramifications of Peirce's philosophy of science for our worldview, because it's a world where the world is teeming with meaning. And so it changes everything. It is not the world of Descartes, where things is just extended matter that's inert, and we have these ghosts that somehow happen to be attached to all of us. It's a world replete with meaning. I have no other better way of saying it. My friends, is that clear? If everything's clear, you know what you got to do. Type in clear if I still have a hold of you. And you played along really well, everyone. And I'm going to warn you, this will infect you. You will start seeing the world differently. Once you start noticing the signs, not just using them, right? Yeah, Oh, Owen, you wouldn't believe the applications. The world is going to start changing slowly. Good. I'm glad. The cash value of all of this is precisely in how it reshapes our worldview. All of this theoretical work, right, it's not for its own sake. When you're going to go out into the world equipped with these ideas, to the extent that you understand them, the world is going to look so meaningful, so incredibly thrilling, fantastic, that you'll have no need to make up stories to kind of overcompensate for the dullness of your mortal existence. Like, it's just so wild out there in a purely naturalistic sense that doesn't require you to do some supernatural posit. So that's something we'll revisit later on. My friends, I had a great class. You played along really well. Let's say goodbye and enjoy that B video. I was able to make it available. So Peirce Packet 6 in the readings right underneath, watch that B video and do that right away. And then you don't have an entry to write this time, but Owen, you did terrific. By the way, really good class. Ritu, thank you. Have a good day. Guys, it looks sunny outside, so enjoy yourself. Sonia, take care. John, have a great day as well. Shan, take care. Sundish, take care, my friend. Thank you as well. Thanks for playing along. Nav, take care. Thanks for the great questions. Arjun, take care. Hannah, have a great day too. Stephen, Julia, bye. Andrew, thanks as well, my friend. Bye, Ariana. Thank you. You have a good day and a good weekend as well, Sweta. All right, my friends, this was it. Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to stream the video into the Moodle videos, but have a look.
Currently the only person in this conference.
Really mind-blowing stuff, and that will displace this idea that we all kind of uncritically assume that humans are the ones in control of science, as if we're just making stuff up and we're holding the reins. It's like, no, we live in a world where science pre-exists us, and we're not the only ones who take advantage of semiosis. It's coursing throughout the entire living world. And so have a look at that. Yeah, very concrete application. All right, good luck with the midterm. Study really hard, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks. Cheers.